They moved to Europe, and soon they changed into a destructive cult. They forced their members to surrender their wealth, their job, their study, their family, and eventually they forced them to divorce their spouses and accept celibacy for the rest of their life. In final stage, they even forced us to surrender our individuality and personality. If you want to know more about MEK, there is a book by Professor Abrahamian, Iranian Mujahideen, my memoirs, Masoud Memoirs of an Iranian Rebel, and my new book, Destructive and Terrorist Cause, a New Kind of Slavery. How they did it and how they can change people, I have introduced my model, which I have called it the mathematical model. Briefly, it has 3 stages. The first stage is the recruitment stage, which they use rational and influence methods to change belief of a person or seed a new belief in the mind of new recruitee. In second stage, which I have called it mind control, through control of environment and control of behavior, they freeze those beliefs that they have seeded on the minds of new recruitee. And finally, through use of different emotions, which I called it brainwashing, they will change members completely into a slave of a cult or a slave of the cult leader. In the first stage, to understand how they can recruit new members, you have to recognize that there are 3 open gates or towards the mind of young people, or there are 3 vulnerabilities that they have. The first one is that they care about justice, so they are vulnerable towards injustice, discrimination, double standards, and so on. These can be manipulated by groups and enter into their minds. Secondly, their lack of knowledge. Their lack of knowledge about ideology. For example, Marxism during 60s and 50s and so on. And these days about Islam. They don't know much about Islam. They know that they are Muslim, but they don't know anything about it. And also the lack of knowledge about model of mind manipulation, undue influence. And thirdly is the vulnerability towards ideology. Young people are attracted by ideology which can direct their life, can show them forward, how they can go forward, and so on. Here, Wahhabi recruiters come with the ideology of Wahhabism, and they say to them that this is the true Islam and nothing apart from that, and so on. Through these 3 vulnerabilities, they can enter into the minds of young people, and then they can use rational methods to change their belief. For example, I am not, because of lack of time, I am not going to give examples about myself or Al-Qaeda, how they do it, but probably the most extreme one, Daesh. Daesh strategy, perhaps you know, Zarqawi split from Al-Qaeda and created this new group, Islamic States or ISIL, or I prefer to call it Daesh. They had problem because their strategy was based on killing Muslims. Most of the victims of Daesh are Muslims. Perhaps 90%, 99% of the people who have been killed by Daesh are Muslims. But how could they justify it? They use the concept which is called jahiliyyah, means innocent, means ignorant. And this concept was introduced by Qutb, Sayyid al-Qutb in Egypt, and he said that those Muslims who are living under tyranny or who are living under occupation and are silent, they are collaborating with the enemy. So we cannot consider them as Muslim anymore. They are enemy, and their killing is as justified as killing of other enemies. So you can see with a twist of logic, they can justify any kind of actions. Also, to change belief systems of new recruitee, they use different influence methods. Most of these methods have been explained by, in a book by Dr. Chaldi, if I'm right, the psychology influence of persuasion. I am not going to explain many different methods, but let me stick to two of them. One is commitment and consistency, and another one which I have called it big picture technique. In first one, I remember when we were new members of the MEK, they were asking us to go to different cities and ask for donation from new supporters. And it was crazy for us because we had to spend 1 hour and probably 10 pounds to go to another city and get £1 donation. But now I understand what they were doing. By committing those new supporters to give £1 per week or per month, they were building a road for them. So they could ask more and more. Most decent people are for commitment, they commit to some things, and when they commit to some things, they want to be consistent. So they can use these techniques to ask more and more from those people. Many of those supporters later changed into members of the MEK, and many of them were killed or were killed for MEK, or they were died for MEK. Another method which they are using, and mostly political groups are using, I have called it big picture technique, is based on this idea that if you take a person far from where he stands, in time, in a space, or in emotion, his problems become so small that it's negligible. For example, if you are facing somebody and asking him to come to your meetings or give donations or whatever, and he gives you excuses, I don't have money, I have exam, I have job to go, I have a sick child, and so on, you can move him in time. Say, okay, imagine 100 years from now, we have a just society, we have a justice in whole world, and where are you in that picture? Do you remember your problems then? No. So you can see, so it's better you forget about your problems and come to our meetings. Or they can move them in emotion. Okay, you have a problem, you have a child, you have an ill child. But imagine you were living in Africa. You were struggling for a drop of water or food or whatever. So they will force them to compare themselves with most oppressed people, most needy people, and compared to them, their need is so small that it's negligible. After they change the belief of, a new member, or seed a new belief in their mind, they are facing two main problems. The first one is the feeling of these new members towards their old way of life. Feeling towards their family, their relatives, their friends, and their old way of life. And also their personality. Their personality has not changed it. So their personality is something which has been built during their childhood. These two forces will force these new members to return back to where they were. To neutralize these two forces, cult leaders and cults use control of environment and control of behavior. Control of environment starts, as Steve mentioned, by psychological isolation, creating phobia and paranoia and disgust toward outside world. Enemy wants to infiltrate into us, destroy us, and so on. Destroy us and so on. So they create an environment of secrecy, surveillance, and they justify it. And in this way, they will force their members to have less and less communication with the outside world. Also, they create sense of superiority. You are superior over ordinary people. You understand things that ordinary people do not understand. So when these people face the media, face family, face relatives who tells them that you are a member of a cult or you have been recruited by a cult, they do not accept them because they tell them you cannot understand me. I know some things, I have understand some things that you never can understand. They feel this superiority. Another thing is control of behavior. Control of behavior starts with very simple things. In this photograph, you will see us, for example, anyway, when we were recruited, having a military overcoat was fashionable among MEK members. And we were living in Newcastle with a military overcoat. Just this simple change and have a mustache separated us from the rest of the people. We had less and less friendly communication with our neighbors. And gradually we moved our house from where we were living and we went close to the MEK base, and in a matter of 6 months we moved to collective bases and start living with others. So change starts with very simple things. For example, in case of Daesh, just having these long beards and long robes will separate them from the rest of the society, will isolate them from the rest of the society, and is the pathway toward change of behavior. Then they will use other methods, for example, very strict discipline within the group, very hard work. They don't have any free time, lack of information from outside, and so on and so on. So they will start freezing the old personality, and this is a pathway toward change of the character and personality of the people. After that is a start of brainwashing process, which is mainly use of different kinds of emotions. Cults are master of creating emotion. I am not saying control of information, but creating of emotion. They can create fear from outsiders. They can create hatred towards outsiders. Create sympathy towards people that they are supposedly want to save and bring justice and so on and so on. And they can use these kind of emotions to change personality of people. The most effective things are two basic instincts that all beings, including human beings, have. And that is self-preservation and reproduction, namely sex and self. They can change these two into sin, into guilt. So I feel guilty by having sexual desires. I feel guilty because I want to preserve my individuality. They call it selfishness. And with this guilt and confession and self-criticism, which comes every day, they can create new emotion, continuous emotion, and gradually change people into suicide bomber, into people ready to go and kill, and people ready to shout for the leader, and so on. Here is one of the revolutionary, ideological revolution meeting or brainwashing meetings of the MEK, and as you can see, people show their hands that we are ready to go and be killed and kill for MEK. These are leaders of MEK. And here they go as far as putting themselves on the fire. This happened in 2003 when Masoud Rajavi was arrested for a few days. And many members of MEK set themselves on fire in front of French embassies, one in London and in New York and the other places. As a result, 2 of them were killed. As I mentioned, some groups like MEK force people to go towards celibacy, and Daesh is using another tactic, completely different. They have introduced concepts of jihad of marriage. They invite young European Muslim women to go to Syria and Iraq and marry their young men. In this way, they can control their marriage, they can control their sex life, they can control their emotions. Another act of Daesh is beheading. We might look at beheading as a horrific and barbaric act, but it is not just that. It is an act that creates immense fear, rage. It can dehumanize the enemy, and also it is a violent way of changing the character. The person who does that act, or the person who watches that act, thank you, 5 minutes. The person who does that act and the person who watches it he never can go back, or it's very difficult to go back to where he was, go back to the civilization. So it is an extreme act which separates or isolates a person from his past life. Here you can see how they can manipulate their children by showing them beheading, by doing this beheading in front of children. Or in this photograph, this photograph you can see a father who has given the head of another person to his child and is taking his photograph. Another act which Daesh is using is destruction of ancient sites. Now they are in Syria and everybody is worried that they are going to destroy the remainder of one of the biggest civilizations in history. Why they do it? This is the way to separate their members from anything they might have in common with ordinary people. For example, they even destroy mosques. They destroy graveyards of Islamic saints just to destroy any kind of connection these people might have with ordinary people. Common shared history, shared culture, shared ethics, all has to be destroyed. And it was not just Daesh. It started about 150 years ago when Wahhabis and Al Saud first start capturing the Arabia. They start destroying all historical sites, all remainder of saints. For example, they went as far as they wanted to destroy a shrine of Prophet Muhammad. It might be strange for you. They call themselves Muslims, and they destroy shrine of daughter of Prophet Muhammad, all people who were with Prophet, and they were going to destroy shrine of Prophet Muhammad that the Muslim raised in Arabia and stopped them. Sorry, I don't have enough time. Otherwise, I wanted to explain why people cannot leave a cult. Here are 12 reasons why even there are open doors. I mean, some cults, cult members are living among us. There is no physical isolation like what the Daesh or MEK or Al-Qaeda have in Iraq, in Syria, or in Afghanistan. They are living among us, but still they cannot leave the cult. Why? Because of these 12 reasons. And also I wanted to talk about the freedom of choice, that those who are in the cults, they are not there because of their freedom of choice. Then thanks to Steve who explained it, and there is no need for me to explain more. Thank you very much.